The Truth About Goblins. Chapter 22. A strange smell, a good smell, drifted into his room from the kitchen. At first, Timothy thought he was dreaming. But as his mind cleared and he rolled out of bed, he realized it was quite real. That's odd, he thought. It was early, and he was usually the first one awake. But upon entering the kitchen, he discovered that it was Saphira at the stove, frying up a plateful of eggs and sausage. "What's this?" he said, stifling a yawn. "Oh," she exclaimed, turning from her work. "I was hoping to finish before you woke up. Oh well." She continued preparing breakfast. "Good morning." "Good morning," he answered, frowning as he stood in his pajamas. "Have I missed something, a special occasion of some sort?" "Nothing special," she said, smiling as she brought a plate of hot food to the table. "Just a thank you." Thank you?" He took a seat at the table as she gestured to the plate. "Thank you for what?" "Oh, nothing much." She turned off the stove and started on her own plate. "Just for offering me a room out of goodwill, providing me with a place to work when you didn't know anything about me, offering comfort when I needed it most, giving me an amazing birthday present." She took her seat across from him. "And not only coming to my rescue, but saving my friends as well from what could have been a terrible fate." Still drowsy, he offered a timid smile. "That's quite a list. You make it sound like more than it really is." "It's more than it sounds, to me," she said. "I don't know how I can thank you." "Breakfast is certainly a delicious start," he said, biting into a sausage. "Helping around the shop is another, although there is one last thing you could do for me that would mean the world." "What is it?" she asked eagerly. "I would like you to be happy." She bit her lip and looked down at her plate, ashamed. "I always seem to be fighting back tears," she admitted, as one rolled down her cheek. "Nuh-uh-uh," he said, shaking a finger. "No more of those. If you start crying, I'll start crying, and then we'll both be a mess. You don't want that, do you?" No, she said, laughing as she wiped her cheek. "But it's not my fault you say such sweet things." "My one redeeming quality," he said, laughing with her. "Oh, don't say that," she said, taking his hand. "You're a wonderful person, all the way around." "It's good of you to say that." He stood to make some tea as the kettle whistled from the kitchen, placing a hand on her shoulder as he passed. "But I meant what I said before. Please be happy." Their eyes met, grief in her own, despair in his. Unable to look any longer, she turned away. "You're alone. I can see that." His voice softened. "But please, don't think that way. Don't dwell on their deaths, Saphira, not at the cost of the rest of your family." She looked back up. "A family?" "Me, as well as those two troublemakers out there. You're surrounded by people willing to dive headfirst into danger just to make sure you're all right." His hand brushed against her cheek. "Please don't forget about us." "You're making me cry again, you big buffoon." She hugged his waist from where she sat. "I'll be happy, I promise." "Wonderful." He patted her head and continued to the kitchen. "That's what I want to hear. By the way, I have some news." "Is it about your son?" she asked. "I have a name," he exclaimed, unable to hide his enthusiasm. "It's not much, but it's something." "That's great," she said. "What is it? And what does it mean?" "Donovan," he said, filling the teapot with hot water. "I know nothing of his part in the whole matter, as of yet, But someone who has been in contact with him is to meet with me today with the promise of supplying some much-desired information. This is so exciting! Saphira was beaming. When are you going? After breakfast, he said. And no, you can't come. He chuckled. Please, if you could, keep the shop running for tonight. Maybe restock some of the dragon's breath. No doubt we'll have some happy customers this evening. She sighed. If that's what you want, I'll stay behind, but only because you said please. Thank you. He brought the teapot to the table, along with 2 unusual mugs. He caught her gaze and smiled. A more exotic tea. Hope you don't mind. Not at all, she said, watching as he poured each of them a steaming mug. She reached for hers, fascinated by its smooth shape and surface. These look like something from overseas. Indeed, he replied. Now then, time to enjoy breakfast as it was meant to be. He helped himself to the eggs and buried his fork. The ground started to tremble. Before the food reached his lips, it fell off the fork. The quake, though it wasn't violent, sent streams of dust falling from the ceiling. They both looked up as the lights flickered. More earthquakes. Saphira sighed again, more irritated than anything else. I hope the electricity doesn't go out. Timothy, on the other hand, continued to stare at the ceiling long after the quake had ended. The seconds wore on, but he said nothing. She looked at him and frowned. What's wrong? He paused, shaking his head. Nothing. She offered a sympathetic smile. Living underground must be hard for you. I can understand if you're worried. He made an effort and smiled back. Don't fret for my sake. With a deep breath, he focused his attention back on breakfast. I'm sure the staff at the power plant know what they're doing, in any case. It does make one wonder, she admitted, glancing at the ceiling. But no use in worrying, of course. Another smile, another bite of eggs. Of course. Where's that music coming from? Moaned Annie. Outside, mumbled Kit. He rolled over and stared at the ceiling. Why's there music? Her reply was gibberish. He rose to his feet, trying to shake off the drowsiness. Why was he sleeping on the floor? A glance at Annie and the previous night came back to him. He sighed, stepping over to the window, still wondering about the music. There he stood, gazing out at the waking market, the crowds gathering for the upcoming rush hour. But as he took in the sight before him, he noticed that the throng was unusually thick. It was still too early. This confused him until he saw the costumes and the masks. Of course, he thought. That explains the music. Wake up, Annie! He jumped over and started shaking her. It's the Fall Carnevale. She stuck out both her arms and tried to smack him away, but he was already halfway down the stairs, on his way to take a shower. Ow, he said, grasping his twisted ankle. Mother dear, do you have any soothing remedies for your poor son? Why, Kitsune, did someone bruise your ego? Hardy har har. He entered the kitchen, finding his mother at the stove once again. It's my ankle that's hurting, for your information. Got anything for instant relief? Rest, she said, bringing up a heavy pot of water. You shouldn't be standing on a twisted ankle. But I can't rest, not during the Fall Carnevale. Annie's never even been. He gasped. And I have the whole night off. There's no hope for you, is there? I'll get you a brace to keep everything lined up and maybe something to keep it from bruising. She stuck her hand into a tall cupboard and shuffled around for the remedies. Have we still got the costumes? He asked. They should be in the closet in my room, she replied, bringing the brace down from the shelf, along with some dressings for his ankle. Now prop up your foot and let me wrap it. Gotta shower first, he said, disappearing into the bathroom. I stink. By the time he was finished showering, Annie had just made it downstairs. She sat at the table and chewed on a muffin from the pantry. Mornin', said Kit, coming into the kitchen. Mm-hmm, she replied drowsily. She glanced at the towel around his waist and gasped. Geez, put some pants on. Please do, urged his mother. It's not proper. Yeah, give me a minute. He disappeared up the stairs. What was Kit saying before? Said Annie, still lethargic. Something about a carnival? Ophelia nodded. The Fall Carnevale. It's quite exciting. Only one night long, which is unfortunate. The other festivals usually span at least 3 days. But what is it? She asked. Why is Kit so excited for it? You'll just have to find out, she said, patting her on the back. Would you like some juice with that muffin? Yes, please. She turned to see Kit coming down the stairs, wearing a pair of jeans but nothing else. He had a bundle of feathers and fur in his arms. Oh, what's all that? Costumes. He dumped his load onto the kitchen table. Can't go to Carnival without costumes. He sifted through the props and outfits, pulling out a narrow golden mask. I'm gonna take the fox. Cam usually takes the wolf costume, but he said he's not going this year. Why ever not? Said Ophelia. He used to love the Fall Carnevale. I don't know, he said. Busy with his earthquake experiment, I guess. It's just not right, she said, returning to the concoction on the stove. Whatever, he said, holding out another mask to Annie. Here's yours. Thanks. She took the mask and inspected it. Apparently it was supposed to be a wolf, but its face was white with red streaks across the cheeks, a color unlike any wolf she had ever seen. Kit pulled out a golden garland of fluff for his tail. Look for the white and red stuff, he said. Everything that's gold and yellow is mine. Got it. She gripped a handful of white fur and uncovered a fuzzy poncho to go with the mask, complete with a hood. There was an intricate belt as well, attached to pellets of fur that fell around her knees like a long skirt. Would you like to borrow my boots? Said Ophelia. They would go lovely with that costume. Oh, that's all right, said Annie. I don't need. But she had already disappeared up the stairs. Her suggestions were more like commands. Does this cape make my butt look big? Kit turned around, showing off his latest accessory. The cape was yellow, embroidered with a pattern that shimmered like gold under the light. Draping over the top part of his chest, it left the greater part of his torso exposed. And although it had a hood, he opted to leave it down to show off his vivid orange hair. She laughed. Your butt's fine. It's your face that needs fixing. All right. He pulled the fox mask over his face. How's this? Foxy, she teased. She put on her own mask, pleased to find that it fit quite comfortably. How about mine? Ooh, elegant, he said. Once you get those boots, you'll be all set. He began to fasten some pellets of fur around his wrists. Ophelia reappeared, boots in hand. Here they are, she said. You wore these the other night, didn't you? Annie nodded. It was only a moment before she had them laced up. So? She asked. How do they look? The tall white boots complemented the costume. I think you're ready to go, said Ophelia. Just let me dress Kit's ankle. She wet a scaly material and placed it where the swelling was worst. After that, she bandaged it up and put a brace over everything to be sure he wouldn't twist it again. Kit didn't like the way it bulged under his dark jeans, but it was a small price to pay for all the pain it saved him. Ophelia stood back and surveyed her handiwork. "You two be careful out there. The earthquakes from the drilling are getting worse. I was almost knocked sideways this morning." "We'll be fine, Mother." Without wasting another moment, he bolted back upstairs with Annie at his heels. "Catch you later." They were back at the window within seconds, ready for another exciting night. Annie couldn't keep herself from gasping as they crawled outside. "Oh, wow!" she exclaimed, gazing at the colorful street below. "This is sick!" The market had been transformed. Paper lanterns of fall colors had been strewn from the branches of the trees up above, bathing the streets in a warm autumn light. Just below, the throngs had gathered as usual, but with an unexpected twist. Everyone was in costume. "You ready?" said Kit. Annie smiled. "Let's go." Into the crowd they dived, blending in with the elaborate masks and disguises. The theme seemed to be animals. Although no two costumes were alike, Annie could spot many foxes and wolves, as well as bears, ravens, owls, and even a tiger or two. "Humph," said Kit, as one tiger passed them by. "That's not a fall animal." "Pretty, though," she said. The music they had heard from the bedroom was getting louder as they traveled down the street. Annie thought she recognized a violin and maybe an accordion, but the other sounds were foreign to her. On their way to investigate, a kid in a black bear costume came up and offered the pair some skewered meat. "Thanks," said Kit, taking 2 sticks. The kid turned away and strode off to offer snacks to someone else. "Just like that?" said Annie, as he handed her one. "It didn't cost anything?" "Cost?" said Kit. No, this is the Fall Carnevale. Everything belongs to everyone. A silly thing like gold could never get in the way of fun." The idea seemed strange to Annie, but wonderful at the same time. She noticed that many of the shops had closed completely for the day, aside from the restaurants that were putting food out on tables to serve the growing crowd. "But I don't get it," she said, looking at the piles of treats. "How do they make any profit?" "It's not about profit," he exclaimed, seemingly aghast. "It's about sharing, giving, trading. That food is a gift from the restaurant's owners. Prepare yourself for a day of receiving." Kit was beside himself with excitement. Annie decided it would be best to go along with it and see what would happen. As they finished their meat skewers, the pair was approached by yet another masked creature. Dressed in a brown cloak, the man was wearing a mask with a short beak and a collar of speckled feathers. He stopped the two and waved his hands mysteriously, as if to enchant them. But Kit wasn't impressed. He stood there, arms crossed, and was about to push by the strange man when the feathered figure clapped his hands together and produced a cloud of smoke. When the smoke cleared, he held a perfect red rose. Annie gave a cry of surprise and laughed. To her utmost pleasure, the magician offered the rose to her. She took it, bowing her head in gratitude as she had seen others do. The magician reached out and took her hand, kissed it, and then wove seamlessly back into the crowd. She looked down at the gift he had left her, the beautiful rose. "Dang, I gotta keep an eye on you," teased Kit. "Else some of these romantics might get a jump on me." She laughed nervously. "How's your ankle doing?" she asked, eager to change the subject. "Better than ever," he replied. Even if it had been broken, she doubted that he would have missed the Fall Carnevale. Whatever pain he was feeling paled in comparison to all the sights and sounds in the market that night. Kit, certain that the music was close, broke into a sprint. "Come on," he called. "The next dance is about to start." "Dance?" Annie ran after him. I'm no good at dancing. And I have a twisted ankle. He grabbed her hand. We'll make beautiful music together. He yanked her right into the middle of a circle of dancers. The music had begun once again, growing louder and more hectic, inciting the surrounding crowd to move along with the rhythm. Annie couldn't find any pattern to follow. It wasn't like those school dances, where the fast songs were for jumping and the slow songs were for swaying. There were no rules here, no laws. Giving herself up to the music, she let her arms and legs go where they would. And although there really was no pattern to follow, though the movements of this crazy dance seemed unpredictable and aimless, she discovered a universal dance at the core of it all. Everyone, no matter how they moved, stayed true to the beat and the rhythm, following the music wherever it led. Kit emerged from the crowd and took hold of her arm, inviting her into his wild dance. She leapt with him, kicked with him, laughed as he laughed. And it was wonderful. The longer they danced, the more Annie wished that their dance would never end. Hey, hi, I'm your narrator, Miranda Eastwood, also the author of The Truth About Goblins. If you liked this chapter, remember to add, follow, or subscribe to this channel so you can hear the next one. And if you didn't like this chapter, oh well, I can't really do anything about that. In any case, I just thought I'd let you know about my Patreon. You can check it out if you'd like to throw some support my way. It would mean a lot to me. Not to mention there's loads of extra exclusive content that I only post on Patreon. While I'm at it, I'll mention that The Truth About Goblins is now available as a complete audiobook, and you can get it wherever you get your audiobooks. Thanks for listening.